everyone, it's Storm here and welcome back to the Speakers Bank Weekly podcast. Joining me today is Nathan. Hi. Hello. Nathan, how are you going?
I'm good, how are you?
Good. It's been a really weird day today, so hopefully the podcast can get rolling and we can answer some good questions. And joining me today is Kamel and Zeki as well. Hello, guys.
Hi.
How's everyone?
Very well, thank you.
Good.
How are you?
Very good. And today's topic is going to be about exercise and diet. So we've all been there. What are the fads? What are the constant issues we have it? And what are some of the things that we like to do for our exercise? So Nathan, the first question is, what do you know about dieting and how can it affect your health?
So I find this issue to be really, I guess, somewhat of a dicey issue in the sense that I think there's very much a right way and a wrong way to go about it. So to give you a bit of background on my story, I had to, back when I was 10, 11 years old, lose weight for a major surgery that I was having on my legs. And in order to do that, the surgeon basically told my mother at the time, the orthopedic surgeon at the Royal Children's Hospital said, I can only have no more than 20 grams of fat a day. Now, the problem was, so what initially happened was I gained a kilo because I think my body went into a bit of shock. And then I lost a whole pile of weight. The problem with that, though, is it got to the point where, school welfare coordinators and, integration aides were really worried about whether or not I was even being fed. Because the problem is, I would have in my lunchbox on average usually 6 items of food per school day, and I'd be lucky if I had, in this instance, maybe a piece of fruit, a couple of crackers, and a sandwich, and it just wasn't enough. And maybe like for breakfast, I'd have on some days one slice of toast and a small cup of Milo, and it was to the point where I was constantly craving junk food, because I look at it we're all adults, but I look at it if you were quitting smoking, going cold turkey doesn't always work because you have all the withdrawal. So if you've had someone that's grown up for most of their life on junk food and then you go into shock and you don't have it anymore, you start craving it, you're unable to concentrate. I was very, very weak. And then when we went to see the surgeon, months later for a progress report, I was skin and bones, and he's like, oh, great, keep going. And that's when my mum basically stepped in and went, nah, we're going to put you on a more balanced diet. And I remember after that, I maintained a healthy level of weight and felt great. So I think for me, in my experience, it's basically not so much about, depriving yourself. It's just don't eat too much of, one thing. And essentially don't, deprive yourself of a treat at the end of the day. I think the worst thing you can do is, deny yourself a slice of cake at the end of the day. My wife and I have, reduced the amount of junk food that we eat, and we'll still have, a treat at the end of the day, because the worst thing is if you deprive yourself, you then resent what you're doing and you eventually stop doing it.
Yeah, and like you said before, you'll increase your cravings the more you don't want to have it. It pretty much helps you manage that craving. So it's very important. Yeah.
And the thing is, Storm, especially as for example, I was a child when I first started my whole weight loss journey, I guess. So I was about 10, 11, and I'd go to kids' parties at Hungry Jack's, and I'd be sitting down to a Hungry Jack's salad, and there'd be kids around me eating, burgers and chips, and my mum would be saying to me, you've got to do this, because if you have a burger, you can't have a slice of cake. Whereas when I told my wife this story recently, she said what I would have done if it was me is you have that day as a cheat day, but then the next day and for the next week or two, you are very, very healthy. And then so by the time you get to the next event or family event or class party or whatever it might be, you don't have to feel like you're going to miss out.
Yeah, and that's one of the worst things. For me, it's about if you're gonna have the junky food, just balance it out with a salad or fruit. It's not that difficult. That way,
Absolutely.
you don't actually because with weight control, it's all about calories and portion control. So the more junk food they have, the more calories get in. So and then eventually, what you have to do is you'll have to burn the fat off.
Yeah.
And that's the real issue.
And the thing is, I think the mistake that people make is that people look at a product in the supermarket, because the thing is, my wife, to give you a bit of background, she studied some dietetics. She just hasn't done the placement side of things. So she's basically all but done a degree in it. And the thing is, the mistake that people make is that they want to replace fat with sugar, when in reality, fat is not the enemy. It's the sugar. So we see, for example, low-fat yogurt, and we go for that. But then what happens is they then pump that full of sugar. So then the sugar then converts to fat, and you probably put on more weight than what you would if you had the normal yogurt.
There you go. And that's one of the misconceptions of buying foods. Like, if you don't know how the system works, then you're automatically gaining weight without knowing about it.
Yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you on that point, Nathan, is, when they say in the supermarket, oh, no artificial colors, no artificial flavors, and, no extra sugar, what is it then that they have to look for at the back of the packet when they're actually buying some, common foods?
Well, I'm not an expert in this, so I can't comment specifically or give dietary advice. My wife would be better to explain this. But if it was me, I know with my wife and I, so we look, for example, if we're looking to get past whatever it might be, we look at, for example, how much sugar does it have in it? How many carbs does it have? Because what happens is, with carbohydrates, you'll eat a lot of it, you'll put on a lot of weight, but it'll make you hungry. So one of the things that tends to work for a lot of people, and again, you should go away and do some research, speak to your doctor, do all of that, because I'm not an expert in this. But from what I have been told and what I know is that there's a thing that people do called keto. So what that is that's basically like, that's high fat, and it's essentially like a low or no carb thing. So what people do is, the idea is you're replacing your meal with high fats, you're getting fuller for longer, so you're actually eating less.
Yeah, so pretty much foods that last longer in your stomach to make you want to have better foods, but not like junk food to fill in that hole that you have in your stomach.
And again, it comes down to, Storm, that I would highly suggest that if anyone's watching this, they do the research for themselves, because I only know the very, very basics of how it works. I want to emphasize that my wife's the expert in this, not me. But the reality is that basically the premise of the whole thing is that you're essentially, because you're eating good fats, you're basically fuller for longer, so you actually end up eating a lot less.
Yeah. Zeki and Carmel, I wanted to ask you guys a question. Have you guys ever encountered clients that have had nutrition issues? And if so, what type of things have you said to the client to help with that situation?
Yeah, so absolutely. Well, I myself come from a very fitness kind of background. So I've, studied fitness, studied nutrition a little bit. And the main thing that I'll always see and try to tell my clients to do is to always keep an eye out on the back of packaging. So you want to avoid anything that's trans-saturated fat. Mono and polysaturated fats are the good ones. These are your natural nuts, natural sunflower seeds, the ones occurring from natural products in the world. Trans-saturated ones are the bad ones. The issue is trans-saturated fats are addictive. So that's the type of stuff you'll find in your chips, your products that are created in a, in an environment that's, more artificial. So in that circumstance, you have to watch out for that. But a lot of clients, they'll tend to get addicted to sugars and fats that are bad for you. So my suggestion and the best one is always to them to keep an eye out. I tell them to think about it and have a think about how this can be healthy. And teaching someone, educating someone on this is always a beneficial thing as well.
Wow. So
yeah,
it's a lot in depth. If you haven't done research, it's a very, very hard topic to get around. So
Because if
with
you
that,
have like Zeki, I mean, if Zeki have a fitness background, which is in fitness, while you're studying it, you have to study what sort of foods that you have to take and what sort of foods that you have to avoid. So that's good, Zeki.
Thank you.
Wow, that's a great analysis. So with that in mind, what was the last thing you ate today in the morning? I'll start off with me first. I just had my standard toast, and I'm a bit of a Nutella boy, so have that. And what else did I have? Milo, pretty much. I'm a Milo guy.
Yeah.
So
you basically had diabetes for breakfast.
pretty much. But what will happen is that I usually balance it out. The second meal is just salads. So
yeah,
that's my philosophy. So it's junk first, and then healthy food second.
Wow.
See, I thought you were going to say I balanced it out with a bag of chips for lunch.
No, that actually comes if I'm actually watching a movie or something. That's where the bag of chips comes out. And then later on you're thinking, how much did I actually eat? Because you're actually watching the movie, that's the problem. And you don't realize how much you actually eat by the time you finish.
I don't really very particular with food, so I just eat whatever. Like because before I did like a really bad dieting, because before I was like really, really big, like not really, really, really big, but I have weight. And I went to I have a friend that told me use this because I drink pills to do the diet, and this pills is like it's in the Philippines. It's like you can't drink it. It's like I have I don't know, this pills makes you don't what you call the food is not appetizing for you. So I did
okay.
I did a lot of
get that
things
too.
like that, and then coffee as well. That they said
definitely coffee. That's the other thing I forgot too. I always have a coffee in the morning. That's just
you gotta have. I can't function without a coffee.
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
My brain's like 0.0% without coffee. So yeah.
Always with coffee.
Interesting.
So
what about you?
So the next question, guys, is what are some of the foods that you feel can benefit your diet? Well, for me, it all comes down to what foods are you lacking. So that's the things I'm working on. So at the moment, my diet is lacking in fruit. So I'm trying to put more fruit into my system. And getting more fiber as well is very, very important. Fiber makes your gut feel better. You feel less bloated. And you feel like you can move around better. Because I've noticed the more sort of like yucky stuff you put in your system, the harder it is to exercise and to move and to just do anything really.
Because I know for me, and I have two main issues, which is why for a while my wife and I tried like a keto-ish kind of low carb diet, is because I had issues with high bad cholesterol and I had very low iron. So the thing is with like keto and low carb, it's designed so that you're avoiding trans fats, having good fats and high protein in order to kind of lose weight and build muscle. And
that's
stay
exactly right.
Healthy.
Because when you exercise, it's pointless to exercise if you don't have a good diet to back it up. Because otherwise, you're losing all that muscle that you're actually getting if you can't feed your body the right foods.
And the thing is, I don't know if you find this, Storm, but because I don't know whether it's related to CP or not, but I find over the last few years, especially, I've become anemic. So not only do I have to have a lot of, high protein, I also have to have additional iron supplements, because if I don't take, for example, high iron supplements, I'll kind of drop. And the reason that I know that is because I'll become extra tired. So if you can imagine, for example, if you have an iPhone, for example, and the battery's wearing out, it'll have less capacity. So it's kind of the same when you have low iron. You'll become very, very tired very, very quickly.
Yeah, so what happens with me is the same as you. I normally take multivitamins. So I take Centrum Plus, which is a multivitamin. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to cure your exercise and dieting problems, but it is one of the things that help you through. Don't rely on supplements to keep your weight in check, obviously, but it's a good substitute for foods that you're missing. So I use glucosamine for muscle joints, because, as you know, with people with CP, Nathan, our muscles get really, really sore and tight. So that's one of the things that help prevent it.
So do you use magnesium as well?
Yeah, I actually use two
I
of
do
them.
too.
And obviously, take vitamin C for to stop colds and coughs more regularly. And I also take a supplement of there's supplements you can take for good bacteria, because I don't think we have good enough bacteria. There's good and bad, but when you get sick, your body actually has to use all the good bacteria. So when you're well again, you have to build up that immunity and get the good bacteria back in. Otherwise, you get sick again. So you got to replenish what you lost during that last battle of whatever you had. So
what I tend to do with breakfast is, when I'm taking, for example, my morning medication, I'll take a multivite that has high amounts of calcium and vitamin D, and then I'll take magnesium, and then an iron supplement on top of it. Yeah,
so I do the exact same thing, because let's face it, I'm more inside because of lockdown and how things are at the moment. I'm normally an inside person anyway, but I have to take my vitamin Ds, because it's very, very difficult to get enough sunlight. And as studies have shown, for us, we're more at risk of breaking bones, because our body says it's too weak.
Absolutely. And the funny thing in saying that, Storm, part of the reason I ended up taking calcium and vitamin D additionally was because, and I'm happy to share this with viewers, is that I actually did a low bone density test, and I'm basically heading towards that of someone with osteopenia or almost heading down the track of osteoporosis. And so the doctor said to me, you need more calcium and vitamin D, because the other issue that I have is I'm developing a slight scoliosis as well. So it's extra.
Yes, I've already got scoliosis in my back too. So that's I talked to my physiotherapist, so they said that's very common with our condition. But the other thing is too, when we don't eat good foods, our bodies tend to find it really hard to go and do our bathroom business as well. So we've got to keep that in mind too.
And I find that, like, for example, I take, not only the magnesium and the iron, which blocks you up anyway, but I, in addition, take, I don't know if you've heard of it, Storm, it's called ditropan. So basically what it does is it expands your bladder. Now, the irony and the side effect of that tablet is that it constipates you down the back. So basically, in loosening up your bladder, it constipates the other muscle. So, you can't
it's horrible.
I know.
I'm on this thing called Bracklefin, which is pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, I take that as well.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. And I was going to ask Zeki and Sharmel, what are some of the diet sort of stuff that you think that the clients are missing out? Is there like a particular food that they lack in nutrition, or is it just an overall type thing with clients?
Well, for me personally, I think it's just when it comes to clients, it's a cycle of addiction that's always the hardest because you seek comfort. You seek comfort in food a lot.
Yeah.
And comfort foods are great, but moderation is the issue. So
That's right.
if you can't have
Yeah.
someone moderating you, or if you have someone consistently pushing you towards the wrong thing, you'll get used to it. And you don't want to get used to it.
So when you're saying that it's like an addicting food, I'll give you an example. So say if you saw a person with a large size Mars bar,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of having a small one, they go for the mega size one, and then they keep doing it, rather than just going for the small portion and just doing that, and only doing the big ones on like every now and then, occasionally.
Yeah.
Is that
Well-
what you're trying to say?
Well, yes and no. So it depends because, you know, sometimes if it's in moderation still and this is maybe a once a month thing and you want to treat yourself to a big one, by all means. But you know the moderation that you should choose and the amount you should choose for your own dietary needs as
Yeah.
well. You know, and if you have a support worker with you who's meant to be a support worker as well, they should be supporting you towards the best choice that you're making. So
Yeah.
you don't necessarily want to rule it out and say that's stupid, don't do that. If it's a once a month,
Yeah.
that's fine. If we're talking
Yeah.
consistently 2 times a week, you know, 3 times a week,
Yeah.
1 every day, that's something you need to say, hey, have a think about this. What's something we can incorporate that you like a lot? That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And Vicky, I actually, you know, I absolutely agree with that in the sense of like, for example, if my wife and I, you know, go out on a date night or something, we get some, you know, junk food, say once a fortnight, I'll go for the bigger meal because I've even said to my wife, at the end of the day, like let's say you go to Hungry Jack's and you have the choice between a small and a large meal. If it costs you, say, an extra 50 cents to $1, the reality is if you're going to pay all that money for the meal, you might as well get the larger size.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah,
it's
because you're
acceptable.
saving money.
I think
And
it's
so
acceptable.
therefore, I think, as you say, it comes down to the whole, you know, as long as you're not doing it all the time, it's fine. But when you do it, at least you can have a decent amount and enjoy it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
And I
Okay.
think,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Anyway,
Okay. So now we've talked about positive diets, but what happens if we don't do it? What happens to our bodies then? I can tell you what happens to mine. It just doesn't function. It just goes into this bear mode where I'm caving in and I just don't want to move. And then it gets to a point where I'm just craving and and it's really, really hard to stop. And then eventually what happens is that you just eventually fall asleep and not knowing what happened the next day because you've just eaten so much crappy foods. And then you end up getting sick. It's like okay, it's like having a hangover but with food, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's true.
yeah.
And I find that if I have a day, like if I was, and I haven't done this for a very long time, but you know, I find, like say for example, on my honeymoon, my wife and I basically did for a solid week. We basically, let's be honest, every dinner we had, it was basically a junk food crawl. And after a week, I'd noticed that I'd started to become breathless, like I used to years and years ago, where you start like huffing and puffing, and it's to the point where I remember my wife and I looking at each other saying, we can't wait to eat something healthy when this week is over. Like we were getting to like the last day or two of it and going, you know, we just can't wait to have a salad. Like
Yeah, and that's the thing as well. If you listen to your body enough and you know the dietary intake you want to take in, you'll be able to kind of gauge what you need and how you're feeling. It's just people need to be a little more in tune with their own physicality.
Body.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But the problem is like people don't listen to their bodies, and that's the result. They just think, oh, I'm just gonna do this and do that, and the body will be fine. But no, the body gives you the consequences later. It gives you a lot of consequences.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can't eat a tub of ice cream and tell me you're going to lose weight, you know, every day.
Look, I think the tub of ice cream only comes out when you got really, really depressed.
I'd have to have some very severe depression to want to do that.
So what are some of the favorite foods to eat, guys, in terms of snacks and foods?
Ooh.
For me, it's coffee. That's number one, and then chocolate's probably the second one, and then salmon.
Coffee.
Yes, yes, I'm coffee. I'm a coffee lover, so
A connoisseur of coffee.
yes, yep.
How many
connoisseur
coffees do you have in a day, Storm?
Oh, gee. One in the morning, and then 2 extra shots, and then if I really need it, because by that time I'm bouncing up and down the walls anyway, I get a second coffee.
Good Lord. Wow.
So, yeah, but then, okay, so the tip is for coffee lovers, do not, and I say this really, really passionately, do not drink coffee after 1 p.m. because your body clock will not appreciate it when you go to sleep. Try to drink it as early as you can, especially that first one, because what happens is that there's a chemical in the coffee that keeps you awake, and you need to get rid of that out of your system before you go to bed. So that's definitely one of the tips I want to give coffee lovers, because yes, we love our coffee, but make sure we get the sleep too.
And do you know the real irony, Storm? I actually experienced that last Saturday. I'd made myself unintentionally, right, a really, really strong coffee. I drank it all, and I slept like this is like 6, 7 a.m. and my heart did not stop pounding till at least 1 or 2 p.m. And by the time you hit that crash, because my wife said, as much as you want to play video games, you're probably going to find that you crash. And I would get so tired. And I remember having to just ride this tired wave and stay awake till it actually surpassed, so that I didn't change my body clock, because I thought you literally go into this thing where you feel like you've run a marathon and you're exhausted.
Yep. And you just end up going left and right the whole night.
And the funny thing is, back years ago, I don't know if you guys remember this, but back years and years ago, I don't remember who made them, but they had these, back before energy drinks were really a thing, they had these things called Guarana Bars. It was like a chocolate bar, and it actually had a warning on the back of the label that said it shouldn't be consumed by anyone unless they were 15 and over, because it was a chocolate bar that had so much caffeine in it, it was just ridiculous.
Yeah, I actually want to give the warnings to people watching this podcast is to try to not consume too much soft drink. I know it's a good supplement if you're really tired, but try not to do it because your body will not like it.
And I'll give you some advice, and this comes directly from my wife, because we were discussing this the other day. If you're going to have a soft drink, have a soft drink. And like say, for example, if you're someone who's an energy drink addict, with the amount of caffeine that's in the energy drink and the amount of sugar that is in it and the damage it'll do, it's probably the equivalent of 4 coffees. So you're probably either better off just having a standard cup of coffee, or go and have a Coke, because the Coke and the coffee are actually better for you than the energy drink would be.
Yes. There you go. I didn't realize that it was 4 times.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy. Also, for reference, guys, we're talking about Coca-Cola. Just to make sure we're on the same page. Not other Coke.
Yep, Coca-Cola. Yep. So that if you're gonna drink Coke, just make sure it's during the day and try to do it at night time, because again, it has an impact on sleep. So sleep is a very, very important part of life, and it has a direct link to dieting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So not to hijack this, but coming from Mr. Fitness over here, being me.
Here we go.
I'm just curious, what are some exercises and some maybe good stretches, anything you feel that's really good to do that will keep you feeling fit and healthier or better during the day, or even when you wake up?
Okay, so the first thing I like to do is I like to do London bridges. And I get my mum to help me with that. So it just stretches your whole body. It doesn't just stretch your arms or your neck or anything like that. It does the whole body. So anything that sort of like stretches your body in terms of giving you like less pain, but also makes your body more loose, then go for it. But you need to come up with a system that recognizes, okay, which body parts do I feel tighter in every morning? And once you work that out, then you can make a system out of it. So for me, it's my hamstrings and my lower back. So what we do is we use stretching. Moderate stretches though, don't overstretch it. Only stretch it when you feel something, because you don't want to overextend on the stretch.
Yeah. I'm gonna recommend something, and I'm actually going to plug this company in the podcast because they are just great. So I go to an exercise physiology center in Queensland. It's under a company called Body Smart. So what they basically do is when you go in there, they sit down and work out a plan for you, and every session you go in, they target a different area of the body. So for me, for example, and obviously to be different for different people, but one day they'll target, for example, back muscles and balance and walking. The next, couple of days later, you'll come in and they'll focus on, arms. And then you'll have a leg day where it's just, legs, or they might do like hydrotherapy. So it's one of those things where I think you've got to target specific muscle groups each day. And I think the other thing, Storm, and I think you kind of touched on this, is not only are generic exercises good, but if you have hypertonia and spasticity issues, like a lot of people can with cerebral palsy, is make sure you get someone to stretch you after the exercises, because the more you exercise and build up your muscles, yes, it's great that you're building them up, but you're actually going to get tighter and tighter and tighter.
I would even argue that you need to stretch before you actually exercise, because what happens is that you're more likely to do an injury because you've worked that muscle without stretching it properly. So my theory is that when you stretch before an exercise session, you actually get more range of motion, which means a better quality of workout. But Zeki could actually confirm my theory, which is hopefully is correct, but that's what my philosophy is. And also target your exercises by going to your exercise physiologist and say, look, I've got this condition, X, Y, and Z, and I need help. And then they will help you target specific areas. For me, it's my core. So as people with cerebral palsy, we tend to hunch over a lot. And that's not by accident. That's just our condition. And we are both aware of it. It's just that it's a natural posture. So what the exercise physiologist is trying to do is we're trying to get out of that habit. It's a very, very bad habit.
It's very good.
We know it, we recognize it, and we're trying to own it, and we're trying to make sure that we don't overdo it, because we know what happens when we don't do it correctly. So what we normally do is to compensate for it, we usually do like just simple back posture exercises, like up and down for like 5 to 10 seconds, holding the upright posture and keeping a nice straight back. And we do that around about 15 times for 3 sets.
And I think there's one really important thing to mention, Storm, is, and I know, this is slightly off topic, but I think it's really important that you, like, say you're going to find an exercise physiologist or a trainer or whoever that might be. Don't just go for, like, say, for example, because the NDIS loves, cost-cutting measures, right? Don't just go for, accept a support worker to go to the gym with you. Find someone who's actually not only experienced with someone of your, whatever disability you may have watching this, but actually find someone who has a decent background in exercise. Don't just settle for a support worker, because if they stretch you the wrong way or they do the exercise the wrong way, you could really do some serious damage. So you need to absolutely find an exercise physiologist, and I've been through a rubbish company who I won't name, but find an exercise physiologist that is absolutely, invested in what they do. Find someone that loves what they do and has an absolute passion. Because if you find someone who's just doing it for the money, they're not going to care if you stretch something or hurt yourself.
No. find someone who's going to be there for you night and day, and to
Absolutely.
check up on your welfare too, and
Yes.
how you're going. So pretty much they can be like in your support network as well. They're not just exercise physiologists.
And the last thing I want to say, and because I know that guys can be very, almost competitive, I would almost say don't push yourself beyond your limits. So know what your body is doing. If you can't push yourself beyond a certain point, don't try to force your body to do something that it cannot do, because you'll only injure yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think the most important point that I wanted to make was, when you're doing the exercise, it's not about how much weight you lift. It's about the quality of the actual set. So if you're following the directions of the exercise physiologist or the physio to the T, it doesn't matter if you're lifting 5 kilos or 3 kilos. It matters about the actual direction of what you're actually trying to achieve and what area of muscle you're actually working on. So if you're getting all that correct, then you're going to find yourself that you're going to get a better workout, because you're actually targeting those areas, rather than trying to take a shortcut and thinking, if I lift bigger weights, I'm going to lose weight quickly and I'm going to gain more muscle. Wrong.
It's not true.
You need to have a balanced diet and exercise correctly to lose that weight. There are no shortcuts to losing weight. So if you find out those ads where they say, if you take this pill, you're going to lose 5 to 10 kilos in just 30 days. That is wrong.
And the funny thing with those ads, Storm, it's not a complete lie in the sense that you may well lose the weight, but you know what? The moment you stop that diet, because you can't keep it up forever, you'll stack on double what you lost.
Exactly.
So I think at the end of the day, it's maintaining a good diet, maintaining a good mentality to go along with that good diet, and maintaining good form, as well as making sure not to be competitive. So I think it's always
sticking to the exercise program. That is one of the hardest.
Exactly.
And I would doing it day to day is actually very, very difficult too.
Absolutely.
And I would say too, if you're not confident,
I'm very guilty of that. So I need to work on it.
And I would say too, if you're not confident in what you're doing, like I'm not, and I quite frankly wouldn't do an exercise program on my own at home. But if you're not confident in what you're doing, go in and just do it with your exercise physiologist in their gym that they run, because you will end up so much better than just paying for a gym membership or doing it at home.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we're at the end of the podcast, I believe, Storm. So did you want to play us out?
Yeah. So hopefully this helps everyone back watching. They take some good tips and advice. I want to thank Zeki, Nathan, Carmel for the podcast, and I wish everyone a lovely day and take care.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.